Just because they can spend money on players does not make them a great team. They are a great team because they are well coached. That was Steve Spurrier on longtime Gainesville Sun columnist Pat Dooley's YouTube show after the Gators lost to the Dawgs on Saturday. And I wanted to talk about this because, you know, Steve Spurrier has been around. The guy is probably the second best or third best coach all time in SEC history. He is an amazing. He has been amazing, not just at Florida, but at South Carolina. Okay, and at Duke, to be honest. And what Steve was saying after the Georgia game was just completely correct and revealing. Now, some of the stuff, the way he says it, he's doing a little bit of digging, which is what he's always done. But this is important to listen to, and I some of this is paraphrased, but not all of it. Most of it's just straight quotes. And this is why I appreciate Steve. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say here. He says, uh, talking about Georgia, he says they are one of the most well coached teams in America. I'm going to pause right there. He is completely correct. If you watch Georgia, it's not that they're not, it's not that they're unbeatable. No, I'm not sure that exists in college football or college sports, collegiate sports generally speaking. Okay, people are undefeated. Undefeated is hard to do. Unbeatable, that doesn't happen. So here's what Steve said. He says they are one of the most well-coached teams in America. Will Muschamp is better than he was 5 or 10 years ago. People get better as they go, or they get worse. And Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, he's a better offensive coach than he's ever been. He said Kirby has developed, talking about as a head coach. He says they recruit well. They have their NIL money straightened out. They are a good program. Just because they spend money on their players doesn't make them a great team. They are a great team because they are well coached. Their quarterbacks don't fumble in the pocket. They don't get punts blocked. They do all the little things very smartly. You have to give them credit. They are a well coached team with good players. That third to last sentence right there. They do all the little things very smartly. So Georgia, this is my opinion, Georgia's not necessarily unbelievable at any position. Brock Bowers didn't play the other day. So they are not like, oh man, it's not like you're watching, Kevin Durant the first time he played, or LeBron or Michael Jordan or someone. It's not like, it's just like a hammer to a nail or a screw to a screwdriver. They're doing it the right way every single time, and it just adds up, and that's, Florida didn't do that the other day. And I mean, you can tell it hurts Spurrier, and I get that's fine for him. And, but he's right. And when he starts talking about they have their NIL money straightened out, now Steve can speak for himself, but that's probably a dig more at Florida's situation than it is at Georgia's. I will say this about Florida, and I've had a lot to say about Florida. I mean, obviously, I think that place is at one of the finest schools in the South. They have a long tradition of being very good as an athletic department. They are not where they should be right now, period. Georgia has struggled with basketball, men's basketball through the years. Florida was good at that. They're not now. Florida was good at football. They're not now. Now they're good at other stuff. But what people care the most about is the stuff that people mainly watch, which is football, with a lot of distance between it and the next thing, which may be at any particular school. It could be baseball out in the SEC West, but in the SEC East, it's generally speaking basketball. And Florida was so good. Won 2 national championships with Billy Donovan, and they really did well. Mike White had a successful run there, and they're trying to get that going again, but it's not the same right now. And I think that Steve is probably frustrated by that, which I don't blame him, because he's seen what South Carolina can do. And Florida is infinitely more powerful than South Carolina could ever be, and we're seeing that right now. I mean, without Steve Spurrier as their head coach, South Carolina's history is pathetic. And Lou Holtz had a good year. Will Muschamp had a good year, but I don't think they ever had, and there was one other 10-win season. I don't even think Lou ever had a 10-win season. So, Steve Spurrier is on his own level, But I think what he's saying about Georgia is exactly correct. I don't know if people can comprehend. I mean, they just never do dumb stuff. It's so rare you see dumb stuff. That's what I should put it as. The punting. The punting is the way it should be. They seem to block punts when they really need to block punts. Arkansas in 2020, Arkansas 2021. The Florida game this past. Like when they need something, it's like they can just do it. And I don't. It's not by accident, and I really think that, frankly, what Spurrier's trying to touch on here is something that's not discussed a lot. We talk about this consistently, how well Georgia recruits. Oh, they've got really great players. I have two things to say about that. Number one, you got to work to get those players on your campus. It's not just about money. It's not just about bending or breaking the NCAA rules in the past or the bylaws. You got to get them to your campus. And then secondly, I think that Georgia's coaching job might be one of the things that is not appreciated to the degree that it should be. That's my opinion. I'm not sure I know enough about football, frankly, to be a definitive voice on that. But think about the last time you saw a Georgia player just do something dumb. What's the last time that Georgia's penalties were out of control? When is the last time that Georgia played an uncharacteristic game? Not that they had turnovers, but just that they were getting slashed and burned. And, that just doesn't happen to them. They don't always have unbelievable games. They're not always sacking the quarterback. But, boy, they get off the field 3 and outs a lot. I mean, I don't know what their 3 and out rate is. I don't track that sort of stuff. But it's a lot. It's a lot. This Talk Kirby to Me shirt, you can pick it up this weekend at Red Zone downtown, Clayton Street in Athens. They've been wonderful supporters of us, just like our friends at EcoPoly. But I've not mentioned Scott and Minnie for some time now, and I really need to. They are vital partners to what we do. If you want to check out, speaking of EcoPoly, you want to check out one of their chairs in person. Mindy sits on it every Saturday, well, Friday to some degree too, but every Saturday when you're putting your drink to the side, you can check out what EcoPoly's got for you. 20-year warranty, completely made of plastics and recycled plastics. Our partners are awesome. I'm not just saying that. I really mean it. And EcoPoly's got 15% off any item on their website, and you're going to get free shipping. Take advantage of these great offers when you're coming in for the Missouri game, for the Ole Miss game. Because, you can take advantage of those offers anytime. I'm saying you can see the EcoPoly in person for yourself at Red Zone. I would check that out. Just the quality of that particular chair. But Georgia is the hardest part about the Dawgs to me is that they're well coached. Okay, I'm going to do this now because I listened to the Dabo thing last night, and that's, I'm really now, I don't know if I've got an opinion formulated enough to talk about that, but I do have opinion formulated enough to talk about Clemson as it stands on the field. Okay, and that is this. Two things are happening at once at Clemson, and that the opposite is happening at Georgia. Two things are happening at once. A, their players are not as good as they used to be. Now, that's just all there is to it, okay? They do not have the level of player that they had in the past. Okay. They are also not well coached right now. They're just not. And all you have to do is put the pieces of the puzzle together. I mean, they got their ass whipped by Duke. Forget that game, all right? Against Florida State, they collapsed right when they didn't need to. They didn't have the player in position to make the field goal that they needed to make it. Now, you're going to say that's recruiting. Well, recruiting is coaching. Coaching is recruiting. They are the same thing. They didn't have that. This past week against 2 weeks ago, against Miami, I sat there and had to suffer with my wife through that game. That was totally and 100% on the coaching staff. The player, the quarterback, who I have a hard time pronouncing his last name, he made the wrong play. He did. He admitted it. Dabo talked about it after the game, but he chose to do that. There's no choice at Georgia. You do what you're supposed to do, or you're not playing. So that's A. But B, in that game, there were some bizarre coaching decisions in that last stretch of time that allowed Miami to stick in there. And you thought Miami had some questionable coaching calls. You should have seen the Clemson one. I did not see the NC State game, but there's no world where Clemson really should be losing to NC State. So that's, so they're not where they need to be right now. And it's because they don't have the players, and they're not well coached. They're just not. And I'm not like, this is no venom here. It's just what it is. And when you look at the Dawgs, they are well coached. Teams like Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Kansas State, teams like that don't have super gifted players, in years gone by, to have a lot of success, they would really need to be disciplined teams. We're not seeing that right now from people like Florida, Missouri. Why do I say they're not? To say Missouri is not well coached is not fair, but they're making a lot of penalties, and penalties are a problem. So back to the Clemson thing real quick. They have the number 6 defense in the country. They're 4-4. That's not good enough. They're committing 5 penalties a game. That's whatever. That's not the end of the world. It's not great. It's not the end of the world either. They're perfectly fine in a lot of categories. They're fine. Now, they're not scoring points because, again, they don't have the players they used to. But they're turning the ball over too much. They're being, so all the things that you sort of depended on Clemson to be for years, they're not. Florida. Well, they definitely don't have the players they did when Steve was there, and they certainly don't have them when Urban was there, okay? I don't think they have some of the guys that they had when Will was there. So Billy's got a job on his hands. In order for Florida to turn this around and go the right way, they're going to have to become more disciplined, period. Now, they played pretty well in terms of discipline with penalties the other day, but when you think about Graham Mertz's, Steve Spurrier was talking about it. He said that this is the exact quote. They don't, let's see, their quarterbacks don't fumble in the pocket. Man, that will trigger him hard. Think about the Florida game. What happened in that game? Did Georgia totally dominate them? I mean, eventually, but what happened? I don't know why you're going for it on 4th and 1. Punt the ball, okay? Make Georgia go down the field. They had the turnover. They had Graham Mertz. It was not a turnover. He fumbles. They lose a massive amount of yardage. The block punt. And there was another turnover in there somewhere. I cannot recall what it was exactly. Those 4 plays really hurt Florida. They directly added to Georgia's score. It wasn't 28 points. It came close. I mean, one of those was a safety. So when he says Georgia is one of the most well-coached teams in the country, what's he talking about? He's talking about Carson Beck not making the same mistakes that he did against Vanderbilt. He's talking about Carson Beck, 2 hands on the ball, even when he's starting to run to get out of the pocket. You got guys like Ladd McConkey and Beck making the right decision when are you sitting in a zone? Is the quarterback going to see that? You're seeing all of the guys on the defense, the front 7, they're not guessing. At least it doesn't look like it to me. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and you got to earn things against them. They're doing everything you're supposed to do. They're blocking up front on punt. They're not getting punts blocked. They are consistently making field goals, kicking the ball deep to where if Florida returns it, it's not going to be a touchdown. It might be a decent return, but going to the 35, are you going to really risk that all the time. I mean, and then they couldn't make those returns half the time anyways because the ball was so deep. They play the sport the right way, see? It's just like watching Don Staley's South Carolina basketball team. Those women play basketball the way it's supposed to be played. They're smart. They do it the right way. And I mean, I just pull that. She does a great job with that. LSU knows how to play too, but that didn't come into my brain. Dawn Staley knows how to get them to where they're supposed to go. Kirby and them are not allowing stupidity to creep in. You're going to do it the right way every time. It is something to be admired. And you can tell that Spurrier admires them. You know, he doesn't like it. He doesn't. But when he was at Florida, they were doing it the right way. People just weren't comfortable with it. They didn't like the way that he's a loudmouth. I mean, it's okay. But a lot of what he said is true. And if you don't remember the 97 game, I'm sure he does. But, I mean, Georgia beat them pretty solid, 37-17. And he said, the Gators just got whipped today. He's not like these other coaches where they're yammering on about, Shane Beamer could learn a lot from Steve Spurrier. I mean, honestly, I think Dabo could too. And Dabo learned a lot from Steve Spurrier about how taking a loss, because that's all he basically did against Spurrier. But what I'm saying is, these coaches, just say you got your ass whipped. I mean, the last time Georgia really got whipped, like bad, was 19 LSU. And, I think it was Andy Staples from SI. I'm pretty sure. And he wasn't being, any way about it, but he said, shouldn't y'all be winning more? And I can't remember Kirby's question, but he didn't act like it was some ridiculous question, because it's not. If you're as good as Georgia is, you should be winning, right? But you actually got to go do it too. And that's where the coaching comes in. That's why I think Spurrier is dead on correct about this. And I wanted to point that out to y'all. Thanks for watching.